Have you ever destroyed the trust someone had in you? Have you ever lied or cheated or stolen or violated someone's trust? Has someone ever violated your trust? How do you deal with that? How do you restore broken character after all trust has been lost? Let's get into it. We are going to talk about how to restore broken character, the law of broken character. In other words, how do you come back after your character has been fractured? I'm going to focus on understanding the process of leadership and trust restoration. And this is probably one of the most difficult experiences leaders have because, we have been trained only to succeed. We have never really been trained on how to fail effectively, and I think that's the problem. You have to learn how to fail and what to do with failure. There has been perhaps maybe 1% of leaders who come back and survive after catastrophic failure of character and trust. I came across some stories putting this together of politicians who have been caught with drugs or with prostitutes or avoiding taxes or insider trading or, abusing wives or child pornography. And this is very concerning. I mean, it happens more than you think. It's very concerning because these individuals are tasked with creating and upholding laws. One of the stories I came across was interesting because there was a video deposition on this, and this was back in 2013. This was the mayor of Toronto. This man was filmed high on cocaine. They have him on video. They have him on video with prostitutes. Okay? And so what ended up happening is they brought him before the city council in Toronto. And the deposition lasted for several hours, and every single minute of that deposition, he refused to submit his resignation. He would say to them, "No matter what you do, I am not stepping down." The vote for him to step down was 41-2. I can't believe two people wanted him to stay there. He still said, "I'm not stepping down." They asked him questions. "Did you purchase drugs in the last 30 days?" He paused for a moment, and then he says, "Yes." They asked him another question. "Do you still hold a zero-tolerance policy on drugs and guns?" He says, "Yes." They asked him another question. "Does this apply to you?" He said, "Yes." Yet he refused to remove himself from leadership. So I want to talk to you about a word that you need to learn and keep in the back of your mind. The word is disqualified. Write that down. You can be a leader and you can be disqualified. This mayor is disqualified from leadership, and he refuses to do the honorable thing and remove himself from leadership. They asked him more questions. They said, "Have you told us everything that we should know?" He paused for a moment. He says, "Well, there may be another skeleton in my closet." That shows you the caliber of leaders we have today. Toronto is one of the most beautiful and powerful cities in the world, and the leader at the time was a drug addict. No character. What do you do when you lose? What do you do when you lose it all? What do you do when you fail? I have lost all respect for so many politicians and even leaders in the church. How do you get back after you fall? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how to restore broken character. If you have no character, you have no trust. Some of you may have had this happen in your past. Some of you may be going through it right now. This goes for everyone: politicians, pastors, executives of business owners, spouses, employees, even parents. How do you come back after you fail your children? Let's talk about it. Over the past few episodes, we've learned a few things, but I want to kind of do a quick refresher. Number one, the foundation of leadership is character. Number two, the most important component of leadership is character. I think you are convinced of that by now, hopefully. It is not power. It is not skill or authority or education or competence. It is not influence. It is not money. It is character. Number 3, the greatest protection of leadership is character. You are not protected by your entourage or who you have around you, okay? Because your entourage may not have character. They may be the ones who are part of your corruption. Number 4, talents and gifts are only as safe as your character. Your character is the container of your skills and your gifts and your talents. It is the container that protects them. So if the container of your character is broken, then while you may still have your talents and your abilities, people aren't interested in them anymore. I mentioned to you about law last time, and I'm going to give you some very quick reviews about law. We understand that the foundation of character is values, which produce your morals. But the question is, what produces values? The answer to that is, write this down, the foundation of ethics and values is law. Law is the source of culture. Law is the source of morality. All laws produce moral implications, and written and spoken law feeds the conscience. We talked about that last time, that conscience is unspoken law. It is your internal law shouting at you, telling you to do or not to do something. Law is the source of values. Law interprets values, and law establishes values. Whenever you create a law, you've identified a value. This is why the first thing you need to build any successful nation is not a president or a prime minister. You need a constitution. The Constitution contains the ideals of a country, the standards that they are going to live by. It incorporates and constitutes the philosophy of the people. If the body of law by which we agree to live by, it is the body of law by which we agree to live by, that means that the Constitution is the source of culture. That's how powerful law is. So, I want to give you a couple of thoughts about how law affects culture and then how you can protect yourself from failing by getting back to law. Number 1, character is manifested when your values, your principles, and your morals are tested. No matter what you tell me about your character, only tests can prove what it is. Now, you can call tests a lot of things. You can call them temptation. You can call them opportunities. You can call it, whatever. But your character is tested under pressure. Number 2, character is manifested under pressure because you don't believe what you claim to believe until you are tested to break it. Your convictions are proven by tests, not by your pronouncements. Okay, what you claim must be tested. I want to stress that again because character is manifested when self-sacrifice, self-discipline become more important than popular compromise. And you will always be tested by 3 things. Write them down. 3 things will always test your character. Let's look at the greatest leader that ever lived, Jesus Christ. These 3 things will always test your character, and he passed all of them. The first one is appetites, which includes food, drink, and sex. The second test that will manifest your character is the test for fame and power. The third one is the test for power. Fame and power are different. They say if you want to know who a man or a woman really is, who a person really is, give them power and money. See what they will do with it. So it is important for you to understand that you are going to be tested. I want to give you a list of what I call the power values. Write these down, please. Number 1, values are better than rules. Number 2, values are more important than rules. Number 3, values outlive goals. Number 4, values send a message. Number 5, values must be identified. Number 6, values must be accepted if they are going to work. Number 7, values must be believed. Number 8, your values shape the organization or the nation or your home. Number 9, values are personal, but they are never private. Number 10, values become a culture. Number 11, your values must be shared. Number 12, values attract like values. Number 13, values become social norms. We talked about what norms are last time. Number 14, values can create or destroy. I just want to comment on number 12 real quick. Values attract like values. What do I mean by that? Your value system becomes a magnet and it attracts people like those values. Values also repel values. So if someone approaches you to break the law or to do a corrupt act in your business or your ministry or your workplace or your home, if they approach you to break a law, you are already a failure. Why? Because somehow in their minds, they believed that you would actually do it. In other words, your values were not loud enough to repel them. You should wear your values so loudly that people will even tell other people, listen, don't bother that guy. He's not going to go for that. I know the guy. So if evil men approach you to do evil, you are already defective. Your values should speak loud. Let's talk about the value of leadership. Write them down. The values of leadership: the value of faithfulness, the value of self-control, the value of steadiness, the value of integrity towards those you serve, the value of humility. These are the values of a leader. Each one of these is a seminar. So I have a lot of work to do before I die because each one of these it could take a week to go over. This is how much we lack in leadership. The values that a leader needs to embrace and keep close are so critical to that leader's protection. What is the impact of a leader's failure? Number 1, failing in leadership is not as great as failing to deal with that failure effectively. I repeat, this is important. Failure in leadership is not as great as failing to deal with that failure effectively. Everybody fails in something. Everybody has experienced disappointment in themselves. Everybody has embarrassed themselves and others. Everybody has done something that has made them feel depressed because their expectations fell below their own standards. That's not the problem. The problem is not the failure. It is how you deal with the failure. And I can say from experience that most leaders I've encountered do not know how to handle failure. I'm going to give you some specific instructions on how to do it, not just for yourself, but for people around you. Number 2, failure in leadership is really the closing of an account of trust. People close the account. When you fail, people shut down the account. What account? The account of trust. Remember, you cannot pay for trust. You cannot pray for trust. You cannot buy trust or demand it. It is from the people. They deposit on your account of integrity the more they get to know you. Every time you prove your character to them, they make a deposit. The problem is, you can build up a deposit of trust for 50 years. And if you violate the account, what took you 50 years to build is gone in 50 seconds. That's the tragedy of failure. Point number 3. Trust is the currency of leadership, and it is the reason why a leader is successful. It is not your personality. It is not your power. It is not your ability to speak. It is not your skill. It is not your ability to influence people. It is not your position. It is not your title. It is not your money. Okay? The key to leadership is trust. People follow you because they trust you. You violate that, you lose the account. So, you are as safe as the account you protect. What are you doing right now that's threatening your account? What are you secretly doing that could cancel your account? The mayor of Toronto, when they first exposed him, the police exposed him, he denied everything. And then the police showed the video. Is there video on you? Listen to me. Live in a way that you don't care what people say or what they hear. So, if the currency of leadership is trust, then you can only buy leadership success with the trust people give you. Your number one goal in life as a leader is to protect the account. We need a lot of help in this. So let's talk a little bit about the power of leadership trust. Write this down, please. It is impossible to lead those who do not trust you because they will sabotage you. You will be amazed what they are scheming up when you leave the office. Okay, trust is a deposit on the leadership account by the followers over a long period of time. I defined trust for you in an earlier episode. I told you that trust is an equation. Tests over time equal trusts. That means trust requires two things, tests and time. Testing a person over a long period of time is how you build trust in that person. This is why you cannot stand up before an audience and just tell them to trust you. So stop using that term. It is impossible. Either they trust you or they don't. And that depends on how long they were able to observe you under pressure, with consistency, integrity, candor, wisdom, surviving battles, surviving attacks, surviving criticism. You trust people who survive. This is why the greatest leaders in history went through testing over time and therefore gained a great deal of trust. Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln, Jesus Christ. These people are trustworthy. They are worthy of trust because they kept steady under pressure. Their conviction was bigger than the attempts to make them compromise. Look at this picture. I like this picture. I think we need more leaders in this position. Now, you could interpret this picture several ways. One way would be fear of failure. This man is saying, God, please don't let me disappoint the people. Don't let me disappoint my spouse. Don't let me, disgrace my children. Leaders need to cry out. This is my position every day. It is not easy teaching this stuff because there is a lot of pressure on me not to make mistakes. A lot of people pursuing leadership have no idea what leadership is. I have a private philosophy that I live by, and here it is. If I make a decision, before I make it, I always ask myself, will I enjoy remembering this? If the answer is no, you don't do it. The account of a leader is maintained by the leader's continual faithfulness and protection of that trust. No one maintains the account, only you do. You are the only one who can protect that account. And that account is protected in secret and publicly. You have to protect it in the dark when no one's watching. Okay, the mayor of Toronto, I want to go back to him again. This is a crazy story. This guy thought no one knew. His account was over. And I don't care how much he tried to plead and how stubbornly he refused to leave, he was already automatically disqualified. In sports, Lance Armstrong. This man was a phenomenal athlete, but he was stripped of 7 consecutive Tour de France titles and 1 Olympic gold medal because he was caught cheating in secret. In other words, the winner lost. It's interesting because you can be fired by God and still be on the job. You don't believe me? Ask Saul. God fired him, and he was still there for years, while his replacement, David, was already appointed. I hope that you are not canceling your account and God is appointing somebody to take over your position. So protect your account. Listen, this is a tough issue because this brings the weight on you to protect your character. Write this down, please. The leader protects the trust account with his integrity and character. You protect that account by your being fixed, predictable, unmovable, set, like a statue, where we get the word statute from. You have to say to yourself, I will not violate my values. I will not sell my convictions, no matter the price. This man, the mayor of Toronto, he has lost his account, okay? He still tried to get it back. And it's so tough to do after you fail. Now, he would say things, I helped the poor, I tried to help Haiti, he was listing all these good things that he did. But he never went the route of restoration. Pretending that it didn't happen doesn't cancel it. So, eventually, the mayor was stripped of all his mayoral powers. And then another video came out of him smoking crack. The crazy part about this is how messed up our society is. This man ran again, not for mayor, but he ran for his old city council seat, and he won. The people elected him. And then the people complain that the city is corrupt, that the government is corrupt, and, we're decaying as a society, but you keep electing corrupt people and demanding integrity and character and righteousness from them. Violation of the trust account by a self-imposed destruction of this integrity, and character account cannot be restored by forgiveness. Listen, when you fail, stop telling people to forgive you. The mayor of Toronto did this in his deposition. He repeated it over and over again. Okay, yes, I was caught, but forgive me. I want the people of Toronto to forgive me. I want the city council to forgive me. I want the Senate to forgive me. They don't want to forgive you. They want you to leave. Forgiveness is not restoration. This is what forgiveness is. The request for forgiveness is you saying, I need help. You're asking for someone to give you room, to give you space to get help. Write this down, please. The followers may forgive the leader immediately, but the trust account is still depleted. Don't confuse forgiveness with the restoration of trust. It is not the same. For example, when you commit adultery in your marriage, when you cheat on your wife or your husband, you feel all bad about it, you're remorseful and all these feelings, and you get on your knees and you beg and, I'm so sorry, it was a mistake, I didn't mean to, I love you, please forgive me. After all, you're a Christian. God says you got to forgive. We do all these things. And finally, you get your spouse to say, okay, I forgive you. That has nothing to do with the account. Forgiveness is not the restoration of trust. Write that down. It is simply that person saying, okay, I'm going to give you room to rebuild the account. But then, we're so stupid. We say things like, it's been a year since I cheated on my wife, and she's still bringing it up. Listen, man, the account is still empty, because when you go out at night, she isn't sure where you're going. You need an ankle bracelet. You need a tracker. You need a camera that follows you and takes photos that she can see. You can't just say, forgive me. No. Why are you late? I mean, all the questions they ask you, they're all trust questions. Why are you late? Where have you been? What were you doing? Where are you going? Who were you texting? Why did you come home late? Stop blaming other people for not trusting you. You destroyed the account. And I learned something valuable through my experiences with people. It takes longer to rebuild the account than it did to destroy it. And it takes longer to rebuild it the second time than it did to build it in the first place. Take a deep breath. Write this down, please. The leader must be constantly aware that a trust account, which may have been built over 30 or 40 years, could be canceled in 30 or 40 seconds. And that's why the leader of Toronto refused to step down. He could not believe it collapsed so quickly. He would say, he kept saying good things that he did, like, I helped to reduce the debt of the city, I built roads, I built bridges, I did this and that. He brought this big list of things that he did, and we do that, in our relationships. But I provide for you, and I took you on these dates, and we go on vacation, and I'm a good guy, and maybe I don't gamble, and maybe I don't drink, and blah, 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 blah. You're missing the point. We don't care. People will say, like pastors of the church will say, I built this church, I'm the one who founded this church, and I labored, and it took me 30 years, Okay, but you stole from the church. There's no trust in the account. 30 years gone in 30 seconds. I warn you on this day, do not take a chance with your account. We need to stop failing and start succeeding. We need leaders to emerge in this country to help produce other leaders who will become leaders, who will shock the world by their integrity. I want people to say, where are these leaders coming from? No matter what, they won't cheat on their spouses. No matter what, they won't take bribes. They won't lie. They won't give contracts to their friends who have no business, doing that. You need to be willing to lose friends. You need to be willing to lose leaders. You need to be willing to lose your organization for the sake of your convictions. Write this down, please. The leader who has failed cannot expect the account to be reestablished as a result of his remorse, confession, or repentance. None of these activities restore the account. I'm sure you've all seen, leaders on TV with tears running down their faces, and they're very remorseful. But I'm sorry, the account is gone. We appreciate your tears. We love you, but go home. Okay? Go get restored. Go get repaired. Because if you stay in that position, if you stay as a leader after you have failed drastically, you will cause more damage. Listen, and here's an example. When your car breaks down, you don't leave it in the middle of the road or on the highway. Why? It can cause accidents. It can cause problems. It can slow down traffic. Leaders who violate the account must be removed so that they can get repaired. If they stay in place, they will cause more damage and more problems. Have you ever seen a vehicle being worked on or being repaired while it is driving down the road? Of course not. Get off the road. Go to the mechanic. Get out of the pulpit. Get out of the CEO position. Retire from your job. Get out. You are blocking the highway of people who are trying to make a difference. It takes longer to restore the account than it originally took to build it, so protect the account. The work is too hard to restore it. Okay, so let's talk about how to fail successfully. It's a paradox, how to fail successfully, but there is a way to do it. I discovered God's criteria for leadership, the first one. There's a list that he gives, but the first one was always fear. He would always say, choose one who fears God or who fears the Lord. He didn't say, choose one with a good personality or with great academic achievements or with incredible skill or with ability to speak or with tons of money. He said, choose one who fears the Lord. Why? Because if he doesn't fear God and God's laws, his character will destroy not just him, but the organization. You must be afraid. Don't ever trust yourself alone. That's why you need accountability networks. Listen, I'm a nice person, but I don't put up with foolishness. Okay? I will call it out, and you should be known for calling it out. Be known for opposing corruption and injustice. And if someone loves you, they will call you out. Proverbs 27, 5-6. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. In other words, the wounds of a friend are faithful, but an enemy protects your faults. You call them friends, but friends don't protect your faults. They expose it. They tell you, you got to fix this. Why? Because you're affecting all of us. When you fail, you close the account. Leaders protect the trust account with their character, by their character. Now, I want you to look at this image of a man right here. This is the image of someone who has fallen. What do you do when this happens? What is the process of getting back? Well, I'm going to give you a list that I want you to write down. Here's what to do if your character fails. Now, these are steps that you need to take. They are fail-proof steps, but you have to follow them, and they are hard. This is why most leaders who fail don't do them, because they are hard. But if you do them, you can come back stronger than when you fell. What do you do when you fall? Number one, admission of your need for help. Admission of your need for help. That's tough. In the interview with the mayor of Toronto, now all this information is on the internet. You can go see it. They said, do you believe you are a drug addict? Absolutely no, he says. Do you believe you have a problem with alcohol? Absolutely no. Do you believe you need help? Absolutely no. I'm thinking to myself, this guy is insane. There is a saying that goes, if a person on the ground keeps their hands to themselves, you cannot help them up. In other words, restoration does not begin with the restorer. It begins with the person who broke the account. Stop asking people, why didn't you come help me? It ain't about them. They didn't fall. Okay? You can't help a man who doesn't want it, or worse, who still doesn't think he needs it. I know in your minds right now, people are coming to you. Okay? I know you're thinking about something or someone right now. And you know what I'm saying is true. These people keep repeating a cycle of failure, as if nothing happened, or they ignore it, or they don't want to admit it, or they don't want to acknowledge it, and they just keep going through the same battles over and over and over. You should abandon these people. Endless cycles of failure. Abandon them. And here's why. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, Paul is dealing with immoral people at the church. I think there was like incest and all kinds of sexual immorality and terrible things. And these people were going to church. At the end of that chapter, he says to expel them. Expel the wicked people from among you. Why? Because they infect the whole group. Now, religion tells you not to do that. Religion says, God is love, which he is, but they misunderstand that there's also tough love, and there are things that you should not tolerate. So why can't we still love them? Well, you can still love them. But if they refuse to begin rebuilding the account that they destroyed, get rid of them, or they will infect the entire organization. They are an infection, like the yeast in the chapter. A little bit of yeast infects the whole bread, the whole batch of dough. Number 2, confession of your violation of trust. You must confess that you violated the trust. I learned a powerful lesson in my life. I violated and mismanaged something, and I ended up losing something valuable and important. And during the process, when I was questioned why this happened, I began to explain why I did it. I attempted to justify myself, and through the process, I learned if you attempt to justify it, you are not sorry. You are not sorry that you did it. Why? You are explaining why it happened, which means you are justifying and explaining wrong. There's no justification for wrong. So I no longer attempt to try to explain what happened. This was a lesson of integrity for me. When you fail, don't explain why. That's the point. Just confess it, admit it, and take responsibility for it. Don't explain why. I think maybe that's why David was able to come back so effectively. Read 2 Samuel 12. There's this interesting parable in there. This prophet named Nathan, he comes to see David, and he tells him this story about this corrupt man who performed a corrupt act. And after listening to the story, David states how the corrupt man is evil and he should be punished. So Nathan explains to David, this corrupt man is you, David. This parable is what you did because of what he did with Bathsheba. This is what you have done, Nathan says. And at the end of it, David's statement was this, verse 13. I have sinned against the Lord. No excuses, no justification. And this problem with Bathsheba that King David brought upon himself continued. And in Psalms 51, David states, it wasn't that David kept repeating the mistake, but the problem didn't just go away. In Psalms 51, David says, verse 4, against you, you alone, have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. So you are right in your verdict and justified when you judge. Again, we see here no excuses, no attempts to explain it away. That's integrity. David also made it public. He wrote it in a book. Would you write your disgraces in a book? No wonder this man came back and died with integrity and gave the world one of the greatest people ever, his son Solomon. Number 3, you must identify a true and reliable authority in your life to become accountable to. Now, this is tough. It's tough to find that person. These words are very carefully selected. True and reliable. It's tough to find a person who is true and genuine and reliable. That means they themselves have a strong character that has been tested. But you have to find them. Number 4, you should completely submit to that authority without condition. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, the authority that I'm talking about here is not your friends. I may be friendly to you, but if I am in a position of authority over you, I cannot be your friend primarily. If you tell me I am your authority, I am not your friend. I am friendly, but don't get carried away. I will lay into you if I need to. Don't put conditions on the submission. You ever have a friend or someone, they give you conditions to help them? Someone asks for help, and then I tell them, okay, I'm available on this day. And then they say, I'm busy that day. How about this day? Listen, I'm not the one who fell, and I'm not the one who needs help. Okay? So I am available when I'm available. So you make yourself available on my schedule. No conditions. Number 5, obedience to the advice and the counsel and the instructions of that authority without condition. This is tough. So this means if you're in a position of authority and the council tells you that you need to step down from your position for a year while you go get help to be restored, you literally have to go before the organization and say, look, my authority said I must step down for a year, so I'm going to see you next year. Sometimes they say you got to step down for 2 years. Sometimes they say it is over. Leave. You got to go find yourself something else, another job or whatever it is. The damage is so great that you cannot come back to this specific position. Are you willing to follow instructions to be restored? The next one is even worse, number 6. Accept responsibility for all the failure, and you must agree never to attempt to defend yourself or your act of indiscretion. Don't ever stand up after you have fallen and try to explain it to people. This is very important, okay, because you are disqualified to speak. You lost your authority. So what do you do then? Well, this leads to number 7. You must allow the authority to represent you to the community. Let the authority speak on your behalf because they still have authority with the people. The authority over you that did not violate the trust account still has authority and respect from the people. You know, when Peter messed up, when he denied Jesus 3 times, I could imagine that the other 11 disciples maybe got excited a little bit because some of them were jealous of Peter. Maybe they thought that was their chance to become the favorite. But did you ever read how Peter was restored? Did you recognize who restored it? John 21. Now, this was after the death and resurrection of Jesus. Peter went out fishing, probably because, he felt maybe like he wasn't qualified to be in ministry anymore, and maybe that was the only thing that he could control. The guy was a professional fisherman. I mean, that's what he did. So, he had just fallen. He had just done something that he regretted, and he was probably full of guilt, from denying Jesus, and he had some shame and things that came along with that. So he took his boys on a little fishing trip to clear his mind. This was something that he was good at, so he was confident in it. This is kind of how we revert back. Well, Jesus was on the shore, but they didn't recognize it was him. And Jesus said, hey guys, did you catch anything? And they said, no, not yet. So he tells them, cast your nets on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. So they did. And they caught so much fish they were unable to bring it in. Then they recognized it was Jesus. Peter was so excited to see the authority, to see his friend, to see his Savior, that he jumps out of the boat and swims to shore. There was still some unfinished business between Peter and Jesus. Now, Jesus had this breakfast, waiting for them, this cookout with fish and bread, and everyone, all the disciples were sitting there. And then they ate. And after they ate, the authority wanted to speak to Peter. So Jesus, sat with Peter, and he had some questions for him. He asked him 3 times, one for each of the times Peter denied him. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter replies. Feed my lambs, the leader says. Do you love me? You know that I love you, Peter replies. Feed my sheep, the authority says. Do you love me? Peter is hurt. He goes, Lord, you know that I love you. You know everything. Feed my sheep, Jesus says. The leader was giving him instructions and work to do. He was reinstating Peter in front of everyone. Once the authority calls you back, it is over. Problem solved. But we like to call ourselves back. We stand there before the people and explain to them, well, I had some indiscretions and yada, yada, yada. Buddy, leave. Everybody's weak, everybody has temptations. Shut up. You are disqualified. Well, everybody has weaknesses. Everybody fails. You are disqualified. Your safety under failure is your authority, the one that you submit to. So when you fall, run for cover. Don't run for explanation. Run for cover. Shut your mouth. You are disqualified. This is why when you go to God, you cannot go in your own name. So God says, don't come to me in your name. Come to me in the name of Jesus. Your name is no good. Number 8, total submission to the discretion of the authority with regard to your readiness to return to public service. Now, this one is important. This means that the authority has total control of the discretion and decision as to when he thinks, or the authority thinks, you are ready to come back. This is very dangerous. I see people say all the time, I went to counseling and it's been 6 months and I feel like the Lord said I'm ready to come back. Like, what? Be quiet. You cannot bring yourself back. Don't ever forget that. You cannot bring yourself back after a fall. The authority has to bring you back, and the authority controls when that happens. This is why people who are not called back kind of just walk back, and end up somewhere else. They're not sent back. A pastor might, embezzle some funds from a church, and then he disappears, and then he reemerges in another city, starting a new church. Or a pastor commits adultery, and then he disappears for a bit, and then he comes back as head pastor. Who asked you to come back? Where was the announcement from the authority that you were even wanted back? When the authority brings you back, then the followers' respect for the authority begins to restore the trust account. Because the followers don't trust you anymore, but they do trust the authority. You've got to rebuild the trust. Okay? So they also have to trust the person who you trust so that they can start restoring your account. In other words, the followers think that, if the authority trusts him, then maybe we can begin to trust him again. Remember, you cannot demand trust. Number 9, permanent establishment of a relationship with the authority for ongoing accountability. This is necessary. This means that never again for the rest of your life will you be without accountability. You will have to report for the rest of your life to an accountable authority. This is to protect you and the people you influence. That's how you come back. When people don't trust you anymore, they trust the ones you trust. As long as the ones you trust you, then the followers will put trust in you. That's why we can be trusted, because God trusts Jesus. He doesn't even want to know your name. He wants to know the name of his son, Jesus. He said, keep using my son's name for the rest of your life. You can come back after a fall, but you have to follow the instructions. And I know it's tough, but you are damaged. You need repair, okay? Not a Band-Aid. Finally, failure is not determination of a leader's call, and that's good news. Failure is not the determination of your assignment or even your gifts. You still have your gifts and your talents. Okay, they don't leave you in a failure. Failure must be seen as a detour. It is an interruption in your life. It is even an attempt to cancel destiny, but you can come back. You can get back on course. Your destiny is not canceled by failure, but it is canceled by your inability to deal with failure effectively. So, if you have fallen down, if your character has been destroyed, it is time for you to fall up and seek restoration. This is why I am here today, not just to teach you how to develop character, not just to teach you how to protect it, but also how to restore it once you lose it, because there is life after the fall. Thank you very much.
See ya!